look, you're trying to bring out the best in your child, right? Isn't that what you would do if you loved them?
Yes.
And so you have to be disappointed if they're not living up to who they could be. And how are they going to be secure if that doesn't happen? Because they're going to think just what you thought is like, oh, well, I really, was lazing around like a useless bastard, and that's okay. How does that make you feel sick? Everything you do is okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's like, you might as well just hang yourself right then and there if everything you do is okay. No, I mean, no matter what you do, no matter how despicable, no matter how underhanded or deceitful, that's okay. It's like, no, it's not. That is not how you make a child feel secure.
That's a lie.
You're not being definitely truthful. A lie.
You're not being truthful. So maybe there's truth. Maybe there's confidence with truth. I have a friend who's like kind of Quebecois. We don't even know what the fuck this kid is. Like, he kind of had an accent when he spoke English, but he like lived in America like his whole life. It was very weird. But he's one of our best friends, Laurent. He says he's from France, but Canada, who the fuck cares? But this guy was so honest with us. And we just assumed it was because he was European. Like, we just grew up in New York. We never heard anybody just be that honest. Like, we'd be, what do you think of the pants? And he'd be like, they just don't fit you. You're too fat for the pants. And we're like, are you being serious? You joking around? Whatever. But I'll tell you something. Whenever that guy says something complimentary, I believe it more.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely worth thinking about too.
It's like, are we willing to pay the price for our words to be valuable?
Now you could put that on a t-shirt and print it. That's a great phrase, because the price is you don't want to debase the currency. This is the problem with every child wins a trophy day.
Yes.
It's like, if everything is valuable, then everything is of equal value. And that equal value is zero, because everything can't be valuable. It isn't possible. Nothing is valuable when everything is valuable. There has to be a differential. There has to be judgment. There has to be hierarchy, all of that people are upset about. It's like, wait a minute, do you not want some things to be better than others? Wait a second, are you sure about that? You don't want to be better tomorrow than you are today? And that means that means you judge yourself. One of the things I learned from Carl Jung, it was so brilliant, that one of the things he wrote in one of his books, it was about Christ coming back in Revelation. He was trying to explain why the book of Revelation was appended onto the end of the Bible, because it's such a strange hallucinogenic trip, and it's an extremely bizarre book. In any case, Christ comes back as a judge, and most people are damned and some are saved. Well, Christ is an ideal. So in the gospel, he's mostly merciful, but an ideal is a judge. Well, why? Well, because you haven't lived up to the ideal. Of course it's a judge. You can't have an ideal without it being a judge. So then let's say there's the ultimate ideal, right? Yeah. The ultimate, let's imagine there's the ultimate you could be. You kind of have glimmerings of that, because when you're acting that way, and when you're not. Yeah. So, well, that's also your ultimate judge. And how could it be otherwise? Because every time you're not that, you're going to feel guilty and ashamed.
Yes.
And you might say, well, I'd like to dispense with all of that, because who wants to feel guilty and ashamed? And fair enough, man. But are you going to sacrifice the ideal so that you don't feel guilty and ashamed? Then what do?
Then you have nothing.
You just sit there because everything's okay.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. And I think it's better to love people for who they could be. I think so.
It's better to love people for who they could be. In other words, you know the moral shortcomings of your friend, but you are going to love him for who he can be.
Well, I mean, it's complicated, right? Because you love people and they have their shortcomings and their vulnerabilities, and you have to take that as a package. But look, if you're someone's friend, if you're really someone's friend, and they betray themselves, you're unhappy with them for doing that, because they've sacrificed their better self for their lower self. And if you're a real friend, that doesn't sit well with you. So I don't know to what degree we love each other because we see the ideal in someone else and are trying to encourage that forward. But I know in my clinical practice, there's a psychologist, Carl Rogers, a famous psychologist, and he propounded this theory of unconditional positive regard, that you should have that with your clients, unconditional positive regard. And I thought through that a lot. I thought, no, that isn't right. I get what he was doing. I'm a great admirer of Carl Rogers, and his work taught me a lot. But my sense in therapy was the best in me is serving the best in you.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to help you do is separate the wheat from the chaff. you and I will both decide what ideal we're pursuing in relationship to your life. I don't want to impose that on you. It has to be a consequence of dialogue, because I don't know you, and you're a particular person, and your direction is your particular direction. It can't be mine. That would be wrong. But once we've established your direction and your ideal, then part of what we're doing in dialogue is to separate out what is unworthy of that in you. And I can't see how you don't do that with your friends and with the people that you love.
You have to, but it's hard because you love them and you know that the things you say could hurt them. And the last thing you want to do is hurt the people you love. And so sometimes you put a Band-Aid on these cuts with like a baby lie, and it's selfish. If you really wanted to help that person, you would tell them the fucking truth. You deal with that discomfort. They would deal with the discomfort, and then they'd get better, and then you guys would be better.
Yeah, or you get sophisticated enough in your ability to do that, so that you can serve both the masters we talked about at the same time. You can tell the truth, but you don't do it in a way that's damaging.
And
that's hard. Let's not make any mistake about it. This is very, very difficult.
That's a tightrope walk.
I do think, like, I thought a lot about friendship and about if something good happens to you and you have a friend, you can go tell them and they're happy for you. And that's because they want things to be better for you, right? Yeah. They're not jealous. They're not upset about it.
Yeah.
And I do think that we see the ideal in people that we love, and we try to call that forward. I believe that to be the case. I think that's right.
Yeah. Now you got me thinking about like friends, and I'm trying to understand like when I know that I really like love somebody as a friend. And there's like a weird protective instinct that kicks in where I have this like, this not vision, but like, when you have this like imaginary play that's going on in your head, this scenario has never worked out. Oftentimes it happens, after an act, right? Like what I would have said to that guy who embarrassed me or something like that. But like, I'll have this little play in my head where somebody does something to that person that I love, and then I inflict some sort of pain on that person to demonstrate to the person I love that nobody can do anything to them without me doing something. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, it's kind of like barbaric that I got to like beat somebody up to prove that I love somebody. But I wonder if that's like instilled in our DNA. It's like the people that become part of our tribe, we want them to know that they're safe, that they're protected. And that safety and that protection is.
No, I think that I think that's part of the hero myth, as far as I'm concerned, is to protect your territory against the barbarian interloper, right? Yeah. The evil barbarian interloper. Yeah. And there is something about that can go terribly wrong, obviously, but there is something that's noble and heroic about it. A lot of that instinct has to be transmuted up into the religious domain, I think, essentially. So
what does that mean?
Because you do want to protect the people that you love, but it isn't precisely that you want to protect them against the bad person who might come along. It's that you want to protect them from malevolence itself.